One more. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm Mia Voss. You're watching the Mia Connect Power Chat. It's time for another fun show, but guess what's missing again, guys? And Gary pointed it out in the green room. He's like, where's the tiara at? So listen, if everybody could ping Google and say, what's going on? Why does Mia's tiara not work? Because watch this. I can get this to work. You know, I can be a pirate. I can have this. I can't get my tiara to work. Go figure. So as we joked before, this is not the real one. The virtual one is the real one. So bear with me on that. But listen, I am so excited. I have two people on my virtual couch that I'm going to try really hard not to nerd out on because I met them both at ShiftCon. I have a big hangout interview crush on both of them. You guys know how I get that way. So I'm going to introduce our two guests, and then we're going to get to the backpack. So first, I have Gary Hirshberg with Stonyfield. Hello, how are you?
Hello. So great to be with you again.
Good to see you again. I'm going to clap for you. And I like how Carlene is lurking in the background, just keeping things running, right?
She's the woman behind the curtain.
She is the right-hand woman. Absolutely. Now, I also have Rafi Lorderman, and he is with Dr. Bronner's. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's good to see you. And you guys are representing from both coasts, aren't you?
Yep. I'm on the West Coast. I'm repping the West.
Yep. Whoop, whoop. I'm right in the middle in Denver. And Gary, where are you?
I'm in New Hampshire where the leaves are unbelievable, but there's too many political ads running.
You can't even pay attention to the beauty because you're just like trying to block it all out too. Yes, and speaking of hangout crushes, I wanted to give you a shout out, Gary, from Andy Lyons, who is also on the East Coast, and she mentioned you. She was my guest last week, and so she said she's a little nutty for you too. So all kinds of good stuff going on. So listen, obviously, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about companies making a difference. Gary and Rafi are both representing two amazing companies doing cool stuff. You know how I love that. And making a profit. Hey, so take notes. And Backpack, you know I want to hear your questions too. So we're used to that. Are you guys up for a couple questions from the Backpack?
Of course.
Yeah.
Woo, here we go. Okay, we're going to jump into comments, and then we're going to talk about each of you. So let's start with Carmen Mandich, coming in from Spain. Hi, girlfriend. Let's see if it'll come up for us. She's coming in from Spain. She says hi to Dave Pipe, who's in Sussex. Wants to know if he has popcorn, and there he is. Dave Pipe, what's up, brother? I do not have the applause app on, just for you, Dave Pipe. You know I never do anyway, but I have to shout you out. We have Stefan, who's also on the East Coast. What a nice breath of fresh air, listening to non-digital business talks about things other than SEO, content marketing, and social media. Bravo. Thank you, my brother. You know I love to cover all kinds of fun stuff. Rain Dell, she's in Canada. She loves Dr. Bronner's. I've been using them for a few years now. I've been looking forward to hearing more about this company. So, Rafi, pressure's on, brother. Give us some good yes. Exactly. Another Dr. Bronner shout out. JP says the most amazing intense ever.
Yep,
I have to agree on that one too. We have Richard, most excellent adventure to ensue on this HOA, thank you. And then we have my brother from another mother. This is Chef Dennis, whose show is on right after mine. It's going to be an excellent show. He said that the other day, can't wait till Friday, because guess what? It's Friday, and it's on and popping. So I love it that William is taking his walk and listening to us, so that's the beauty of Hangouts. And then Debbie Davis says, a ShiftCon 2014 sequel, yay, and that is very true. And then one other shout-out, Yassine's in France, all colorful, thank you. I went green because, you know, I like green, and we're going to talk about green today. So without further ado, just a real quick aside, how I met both of these guys, as I mentioned, was ShiftCon. So you're going to see a theme on what both of these companies do, which is one, sustainable, great for the environment, great for the employees, and making some money, which we all love. We're all for profit. So I'm going to start with Gary. Gary, I know you are now the chairman of Stonyfield, but listen, 31 years later, brother, it's kicking, right?
Stonyfield's been quite a run. We call it a 31-year overnight success. You know, it's, we started actually as a nonprofit, as a little organic farming school, and when Ronald Reagan came in and slashed funding for renewable energy and organics and all the things that we were working on, we realized that we needed to create some means of self-support. My partner made this incredible yogurt. He also made beer and pickles and all kinds of other cultured foods, but we launched with our organic yogurt with 7 cows, and today, of course, Stonyfield all over the country and actually in several parts of the world. We support 1,600 family farmers. Average herd size is about 40 to 50 cows. It's, again, all organic. It's almost a $400 million business, 500 employees. And really, I think probably my greatest point of pride is millions of acres of chemical-free farming that we support.
Let me give that a whoop whoop. And I know that's what you've been working towards, and that was not easy to do. I love the line you said when our interview. It's like you know, it was an interesting business model because it was something that nobody was even looking for. You didn't necessarily have a product or a market, right?
Yeah, well, I always joke that we had a wonderful company in the early days, just no supply and no demand.
Right, supply and no demand, right?
We literally couldn't find other farmers willing to farm organically. The funny thing is, you know, people say to me that organic isn't really proven. The reality is it's the chemicals that are not really proven. We've been on a 50 or 60 year experiment with our bodies and the planet. Organic is as old as agriculture is, but of course today now it's the fastest growing sector. In the same time that we've grown from 0 to 400 million, the industry's grown to a $35 billion industry. It's now 4.5% of U.S. foods, and other parts of the world, in Austria and Germany, it's in the double digits. Organic carrots now make up 22% of U.S. carrots. So it's you know, we're inventing the future, and my view is we just got to move it along a little faster because unfortunately we're up against some serious problems from climate change to toxification, and that's what organic is trying to address.
And again, that's what I'm loving about your company is you built it. It was not easy. It was not cool back then. It was, you know, country before country was cool, as I said to you before, and now it's grown into this big business, and you've been able to, and we'll get into that later, that to step away from Stonyfield, hand it off to Walt Fries, that was the former CEO of Ben & Jerry's, right?
Yeah, actually, there's a guy named Steve Torrance who runs the company now, who's
nice.
my former marketing VP.
Oh, even better. So that's, I mean, what a cool loop into that as well, that this is somebody who's been with the company and has seen it go and now is taking over. So now you can go do what you want to do, which is getting more into policy and the reason why you started the company in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, as I said a few moments ago, it's not enough anymore to build spectacular companies, though I'm, you know, obviously thrilled to be on with Rafi and I'm a big Dr. Bronner's fans, but the reality is that you know, the hands of power in this country are really controlled by a handful of very, very wealthy, very successful corporations who currently in the GMO space, and I know we'll talk about this, are really 5 or 6 chemical companies who are spending beyond what any of us could ever spend. So we've got to really reawaken our power as individuals to retake control of our system, and for me that means getting into policy.
Right. So, I mean, and that's the good thing, too, is that, you know, and when we initially talked about the show, everyone, when I met Gary and Rafi in LA at ShiftCon, and shout out to Leah for introducing us all together, the initial thing was to talk about going to the polls and voting, which we are going to get to as well, because I'd love to cover how as individuals, even small companies, which you guys started as a small company too, how you can get your voice heard, and either that's with, you know, within the community or getting involved in local policy, which I think is a huge thing as well.
Well, you know, I'm glad you said that. I mean, the reality is we put a lot and unnecessary amount of attention on our elections, which are every 2 or 4 years, or here in New Hampshire, it just sort of never ends. But the reality is that we vote every single time we purchase. And, you know, we as consumers tend to think that we're the victims of whatever is being put out on the shelf, if the size or shape or color or flavor or price, or whether it's organic or not or local or not, is something decided by somebody else. But the reality is what's on the shelves mirrors our desires. The companies exist to serve us. In the pyramid, we're actually on top. And we have to start to recognize that if we could pool that power, that economic power, the power of voting every single time we purchase, these companies will do what we want. But we haven't been as organized as we need to. And that's why, for me, it wasn't enough to just build a wonderful company. I needed to get really into how we exercise that political power, how we fight against the force of this enormous amount of money that's being spent to influence policy in favor of chemicals, agrochemicals, and you know, we're winning the war, but we've got some pretty tough battles in front of us right now.
Absolutely, I know it's definitely something, and you know, guys, now you know why I invited Gary on here. I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and I love what the message is. This is bipartisan. This is not a party line thing. This is really about empowering companies and the individuals that work for the companies, and then what's going on our table, what's going on our bodies, the whole thing. So you can see why I got a little fired up and wanted to bring this on. But again, I love the idea of companies that are empowering their employees or getting, because I'm sure, talk a little bit about Stonyfield, like how their employees, because I met 2 of your fabulous employees, and we got to interview them at ShiftCon as well. But tell me a little bit about how you're getting, or how Stonyfield engages their employees in this.
Yeah, well, I have to say you've got 2 great companies on that count here. Dr. Bronner's has been incredible with its employee orientation and education to the idea of celebrating the power of one. For us, it begins at your orientation. When you, on day 1, you start the first of 3 phases of orientation. You're literally out in the field, planting, seeding, harvesting, learning the difference between organic and non-organic agriculture. That continues. We have monthly whole staff meetings where we announce our results, but we also bring in speakers to share and explain the difference. We have everybody at Stonyfield can be a part of a CSA. We have literally our own company-wide CSA. We have Making a Difference days where you can work a couple of days a year and get paid to be out doing volunteering. So, when you come to Stonyfield, you know from the beginning that you're coming to a place that respects you as an individual, but also respects and understands that the power that you have to do real good.
I'm absolutely loving that. I love the different examples. I know, and I want to give a shout out to Susan Finch. She'd actually thrown a couple of really practical things in there too. So what better way for companies as well to say it's not just about the bottom line or making the buck. It's about one that's going to edify and educate you and your family, and then allow you to say, hey, get involved with the community. It's not just about coming to work.
Well, for us, just as an example, and I know this is true with Dr. Bronner's and actually most organic companies, by definition, our gross margins are not as rich as our conventional counterparts, mainly because we're in business to preserve our supply chains, to preserve biodiversity, to improve soils, to improve the well-being of family farmers. That means we pay our farmers more. And so the net of that is that we can make a strong bottom line, but we have to sacrifice advertising to do it. So instead of advertising, we do what you experienced at ShiftCon. We have our people out there. I always say I can ship the yogurt 3,000 miles. It's the last 18 inches that makes all the difference. We have to get it into people's mouths. And from the very, very beginning, we were milking our cows during the day, driving down to Boston in the evening to demo and sample but the flip side of that is it's expensive, it's time-consuming, but you build a personal connection. You give people a chance. It was sort of social media before there was social media. In the early days, my favorite example is when we wanted to introduce people to our product. We invited them to adopt a cow, and they could send in 5 yogurt tops, the lids, and they would get a photograph of their cow, a certificate naming them the co-owner of their cow. And in those days, the cows would write them 2 letters every year. Now, of course, the cows have gone paperless. It's all the cows are blogging and tweeting and so forth. But we have had hundreds of thousands of people who connect to us through their cows. And the point is we may not have the money that the others have. We may not have the gross margins, but we have creativity. We have authenticity. We have something genuine to talk about. We don't have to fake it or make it up. I have yet to meet the consumer in 30 years in business who says, no, give me the yogurt with more pesticides in it. So we know that we're on the right side of people's desires, and it's just a question of again recognizing that what people want is they want truth, transparency, respect, and they want to trust a company. So we've got to be out there.
Well, listen, and I said before to go back to I need to adopt a cow so I can get a cow selfie, which I love. And you're right, that's true, authentic. Just this really, you have a fun message that goes with it as well, and getting people engaged in it too. So listen, I'm going to bring Rafi in on this conversation because I know he can throw in a lot about what Dr. Bronner's is doing that's so aligned with the same things that Stonyfield's doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, what Gary was talking about in terms of social media before there was social media, I mean that speaks a lot to you know, how Dr. Bronner's has been operating for so many years as well, with, you know, Emmanuel Bronner, the original Dr. Bronner, and especially his son Ralph, you know, going around, you know, giving soap to people, giving them hugs. It was very much a one-on-one connection. And so, you know, building up from that and building strong relationships with people is certainly a very big part of you know, how we've done you know, marketing.
Right.
I don't think they knew they were doing marketing when they did it. I think they were just kind of, you know, doing it. And you know, and also, I mean, what Gary is saying too about not having the budgets and needing to get creative, I mean, that's been very true for Dr. Bronner's as well. And one thing that's, you know, kind of been a strategy that's proven really fruitful for Dr. Bronner's is, you know, it turns out that just by doing, you know, by being cause-oriented and by getting involved in all these issues, you can generate news coverage. You can generate stories that news organizations, and it's a way of getting, you know, unpaid coverage just by doing what you're doing. So you know, using your creativity and the means you have, and like Gary said, doing things authentically has been huge for Dr. Bronner's.
And I mean, if for those of you who, I mean, I know you've heard of it. I mean, there's such a staple item name, so you know, you see it everywhere, and you really do see it in a lot of every store that I've seen. I love it. What is it? 30,000 words on.
Is that how many it is? Wow, that's awesome.
30,000 words spread across our soap labels represent Dr. Bronner's life's work of researching every religion and philosophy for full truths. I love that. So please go take a look at the link that I put. But so Dr. Bronner's has been around sort of officially for 60 years. But then if you look at the history of the company, you said it goes back 150 years. So yeah, this ain't no new thing.
No, it started. You know, it starts in Germany with a German Jewish soap making family. And then Dr. Bronner was trained in that system, trained as a master soap maker, decided to come to the United States where he felt there was more opportunity, tried to convince his parents to leave Germany as well. Unfortunately, they did not, and suffered the effects of the Holocaust. Landed in the United States, and because of what he had been through in his childhood, and the Cold War was going on at the time, really felt an urgent need to for humanity to unite across religious and ethnic divides. Started spreading his message, and realized that he could spread it better on the bottles of his soap. If he wrote the message on the bottles of his soap, he knew how to make good soap. People would pick up the soap, and then his hope was that they would read the message. That was really for him the key, was the message, and that's how the company started. And he had the good luck of being around as the counterculture in the United States was flowering and being adopted as a very cleanly formulated product that was pure and could be used for so many things, and so was adopted by the hippie culture and kind of grew out of that.
I love that. I was going to say that definitely had a hippie culture thing to it, and when Gary and I even talked a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how a lot of the organic or a lot of these movements had the crazy factor to it. It's starting to move away from it. I love it that it's more mainstream now, and that it's not just more of an exception, which I appreciate. I wanted to pull up this quick comment from Richard O, because this is on Dr. Bronner's. They use hemp oil in their soaps, and he wants to know, is Dr. Bronner's working on getting the U.S. to open their minds to the legalization of hemp as an agricultural crop for its myriad of commercial uses? Boom, let's just get into that, because I know that's a hot button thing,
yeah.
But I get a little...
that is absolutely something... What's that?
And I live in Colorado, so you know this.
Oh yeah, Colorado, legalized. No, that is absolutely a huge thing that Dr. Bronner's is working on. In a sense, that is why David Bronner added hemp oil to the soap. Obviously, it's a great oil, has great lathering qualities, but it also had this. It was a political symbol of, hemp is really the casualty of an outmoded and failed drug war. And so we've been working on that for a long time. It obviously has a tremendous amount of uses, from food to fiber to even hempcrete, which is a great building material.
Right.
So yes, we are, and there's been a lot of progress on that front, which is great to see. Obviously, Colorado legalized hemp along with when it legalized marijuana. And so I think the first hemp crop was harvested earlier this year in Colorado. The
Yes.
first time hemp was harvested, and I think in at least 40, 50 years in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean,
Kentucky's growing test crops, so it's really great to see the progress on that front.
I agree, and I joke about that with Colorado, but that really was what I was excited about. It was, I mean, and I have friends who have cancer, so, for legalizing pot was a great thing as well, because it really does help a lot of people. But it was the hemp part, especially knowing that it is such an easy crop to grow. I mean, Gary, we can get into that with pesticides and so forth. Watch Gary get crazy, by the way. You're going to love it, because we'll get on that topic. But I do love the fact that this is just such an amazing product, and it got so looped in, unfortunately, and lumped in with this, stoner generation, and it was a pretty unfortunate thing. So yes, I am glad that Colorado is obviously embracing that. And I mean, talk about getting out there and getting your vote heard. That's something that people can embrace too, as a cause, to say, hey, separate it from again, the pot generation to the products that Dr. Bronner's using.
Yeah, absolutely.
The ingredients.
Yeah, well, and I mean, to give the pot generation some credit, it was their, it was the marijuana bill that finally legalized hemp. So, so I think that's great. I think the hemp folks probably didn't see that coming, but
totally.
That marijuana would actually lead the charge on that. But for us, I think we're very happy about that, because hemp is a casualty. The ban on hemp cultivation is a result of this ridiculous drug policy that we have in our country, and the two go hand in hand.
I always joke that a lot of people in Boulder have become amazing gardeners and plants, people that have all these great landscape companies, because they just, used to grow pot. Boulder's pretty good for that one too. So, and for those of you who don't know, when you were talking about David, so Bronner's has 3 generations. I mean, it started with Dr. Bronner, and now it's being run by the 3rd generation, correct?
Yes, the grandsons, David and Michael Bronner. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's really a testament as well of it's something that it didn't fall out of the family. And I posted a picture earlier on the event too about sort of the organizational processes that Dr. Bronner's has. Can you talk on that? Because I love how they've got these different branches that they focus on for the business.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very similar to what Gary was talking about with Stonyfield, which is essentially that the company, caps executive pay at 5-to-1. So it means the highest paid employees only get paid 5 times as much as the lowest paid employee. So what that means is that there's money left over, there's money needed to grow the business. But then once you've done that, you have money left over, which can go towards causes. And so the company has defined an array of causes around which it cares, and around which it builds campaigns, and the causes have to do largely with the product itself. We are an organic, vegan soap that has hemp oil in it. So you mentioned hemp as one of our causes. Organic integrity, and now the GMO fight as a result of that is another one of our causes, and also fair trade is a huge thing for us, making sure that workers all along the supply chain, farmers and workers all along the supply chain are getting fair wages, is a big thing for us. So that's how the company is sort of structured its kind of what motivates it.
And I love too, you can tell again, so you've got the 5 branches: commitment to quality, commitment to philanthropy, commitment to advocacy, responsibility, commitment to family. I love that. But I'm guessing too, like that's what each of the people who have headed at the company have ebbed and flowed with what's going on in the world. So again, now you're moving towards fair trade, which I absolutely love. And I can tell both Stonyfield and Dr. Bronner subscribe to that too.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think for David Bronner, first he got turned on to organics and saw like, wow, we're practicing agriculture in a completely unsustainable way. We need to find a more sustainable way of growing our crops. Then he realized, well, organics wasn't really addressing necessarily the human side of the issue of who is growing our crops and are they being fairly treated, and that's where it started moving into fair trade as well. And I think for David, really the two go hand in hand. You have to care about the earth environmental element, and you also have to care about the people component.
And Gary, I know you've commented, if you want to jump in, you've commented on that before. It really is about the business can either be about, the practices of either what you're putting on or in your body and how you're taking care of your family, I think.
Well, I think what you're hearing is a very smart business strategy in the 21st century. I mean, whether it's your cleaning products or your clothing or your car or your food, I think we all know that there's a footprint for everything that we buy. There's a water footprint, there's a carbon footprint, there's a toxins footprint, and there's a social impact, an ethical footprint as well, particularly when we're exporting from other countries who don't necessarily have some of the protections that we might give our own workers here. And so what you're, the whole process, the whole kind of notion of corporate social responsibility or commitment to sustainability, I think starts with an understanding that none of us are there. It's a continuous improvement process, but what it's about fundamentally is not just doing what we want, it's doing the kinds of things that will make our consumers loyal and feeling good about supporting a purchase. So when your Dr. Bronner's bottle gets down there, you don't even think about something else. You go back there, and again I think we need to be, a lot of sort of progressives are uncomfortable talking about profitability. You spoke about this earlier, but I think we have to be really proud and clear that this is a business strategy. This is not just about so much of commerce has been conducted and designed and devised in an unconscious way. It wasn't that anyone set out to say let's warm the planet, let's toxify the air, water, and soil in Iowa, but a whole series of small steps led to these conclusions. And so we got into these cul-de-sacs. I don't think they're dead ends of human and environmental tragedy through a whole series of little steps, and that's how we're going to make our way out. So, the practices. One of the great things about our industry, I say our, Rafi's and mine, is that we learn from each other. We can share best practices. I'm scribbling some stuff down right now from Rafi's comments, and because we're never all there, but at the end of the day, it's about respecting the fact that we have a footprint and we need to be not just polluting less, but actually restoring, taking carbon out of the atmosphere, putting it in the soil, restoring soils, restoring the net worth of farm families, restoring the possibility of making a livelihood in family farming.
And my audience knows this. When I'm really into a guest, I just sit there like a bobblehead, and they can see me down on the film strip because I get so excited about that.
We're all watching the tiara.
I know, watching it way back and forth. And Gary, I thought about this when I first heard you speak at ShiftCon, and really when you're talking about this, of it not being intentional, I keep coming up with a phrase of like the whoops economy, or the a lot of just whoops practices, like whoops, didn't know that was bad, and I'm making a joke of it because that's what it feels like. There's a lot of after the fact of, oh, whoops.
There is a lot that's unconscious, and I think CEOs like David Bronner and companies like Rafi's and the many organic companies with whom we all connect are about a higher consciousness for sure. But I think it's also important not to be Pollyannish and underscore that there are some folks who are consciously ignoring externalities out there. And you'll never guess who I'm going to mention as an example, but you know, these 5 or 6 large chemical companies who have rebranded themselves as biotech are really in the business of a strategy that they talk about being sustainable. They talk about improving yields and building, creating drought-tolerant crops. That's not actually what has been the commercial output that they've generated. The commercial output has been creating crops that require and enable much greater uses of the very same chemicals that they sell. In this case, mostly herbicides. And so the net result of this kind of conscious manipulation, I think, of using the word sustainable, but actually going about the business you wanted to go about in the first place, is that now 60 to 100% of the rainwater samples in Iowa, for example, contain herbicides. So these are enormously profitable, self-fulfilling prophecies, and I think part of the game here is not just doing good work and fair trade and organics and satisfying our consumers, but part of it is retaking power from these folks who have abused it, who have set out with the purpose of ignoring externalities, ignoring consequences, and whether it's the salary ratio, as Rafi was just talking about, which is a conscious attempt to say, gee, isn't there a fairer way to pay ourselves, to honor the folks in the factory or in the field who are really doing the hard work, or just being committed to organic and driving organic standards, or being out politically, as Dr. Bronner's and I are doing. It's about, we shouldn't fool ourselves. It's about retaking control. It's about bringing common sense to the fore and consciousness about externalities to the fore of modern commerce.
And it really can be a wordplay thing, absolutely. We've had that conversation before as well. But real quick, I'm just going to bumper on this. If you're just tuning in, you're watching and listening to the Media Connect Power Chat. Today we're talking with companies who make a difference. And I have, boom, Gary Hirshberg. He is with Stonyfield, and boom, Rafi Leuterman. He is with Dr. Bronner's. I definitely want to let's loop into that on the topic of taking back power, because I know that's one of the big things we talked about. I'm going to throw in a couple comments because you're going to get a kick out of some of these. Are you ready for it? Donald Brandt says, and you can get high as a giraffe's ass. I don't smoke anything, but legalizing Mary Jane is good for generating new business. That's a new one, high as a giraffe's ass. All right, I love it. Richard O says, drafts of the U.S. Constitution were written on hemp fiber paper. That I do believe. Miss Kim, she says, hi, Kim Boltman. Hi, everybody. Cooking and listening, company coming. Interesting, important discussion. Amen, sister. My girl Esther Grandal, who also attended ShiftCon virtually, says, Dr. Bronner's is safe for my son, who is chemically sensitive. My friends dilute it and make hand foaming soaps for the kids. Here's the best advice ever from Catherine. Dr. Bronner's is the bomb. However, I don't recommend washing your privates with the peppermint wand. Hashtag wake up. If you're going to take away anything from today, babes, everybody, that's what you need to know. So listen,
it's a personal decision, that one. I think everyone has to find their own limits there.
Right. I like how you empowered the crowd on that one, Rafi. Yeah. That's awesome. So I do want to loop into that because we did talk about the power of the polls, going to vote. So yeah, Gary, I know that you have looped out. You know, you've, like we said, handed off Stonyfield, and now you are really getting involved. You have Organic Voices and Just Label It, and you just mentioned the other day that you had a conference call that had 24 states that got involved, that got on this call to talk about labeling of GMOs, which, living in Colorado, Prop 105 is up for vote in a week and a half, and I've been working with Robin O'Brien on that one, and I know you're working with her as well. So let's jump into that a little bit about getting your voice heard with the message that your company finds important.
It needs to be said that probably the strongest supporter and funder of these efforts is none other than Dr. Bronner. So credit where it's due here. Look, this is really simple. You know, this is these crops, 96% of them, ever since they've been introduced, and you know, you could question whether they're safe or not, these genetically engineered crops, and there's science on both sides. And you can question whether it's good for family farmers or not. There's good points on both sides. But there's no question, there's no debate that they have leveraged an enormous increase in herbicides, and what we call the chemical treadmill. And it works very simply. It works like this. We have put out on hundreds of millions of acres, we've put out this herbicide-tolerant crop that's tolerant of something called glyphosate, which your viewers know as Roundup. And what's happened is we've created an enormous amount of, put a lot of toxins out there. Roundup is now being linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma and a variety, because we've never used it at these densities. But then what happens is we've created herbicide-tolerant weeds, because in nature, you know, when you're under assault, you don't wait around to do focus groups, you just mutate. And so these weeds are now tolerant. So now we're using even stronger herbicides, like, for example, 2,4-D, half of Agent Orange. And now Dow has introduced a 2,4-D resistant corn. And this is why we call it the treadmill. We're just going in one direction. And by the way, the companies profit with each of these. So from our point of view, the only way this can be turned around is by citizens voting. Everything I just said, the average consumer has no idea that this is a link and a connection. And by the way, these companies use the incredible profits from the seeds and the chemicals to then go out and spend lobbying dollars. And we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of lobbying dollars, so that we're not having elections anymore, right? We're having sales. So our theory of change, very simply, in Just Label It, and Organic Voices, is twofold. One, we've got to educate ourselves. And Mia, you're doing that right now, and it's an honor to be and a pleasure to be with you. But that's what this is about first, is understanding what is really behind these purchases. Number two, it's got to be on the label. We have to be able to enable the marketplace. I don't care if you're Republican, Democratic, Libertarian. You know, we need the marketplace to work. But if it's not on the label, you can't know. Now, organic gives us that, right? Organic means chemical-free, GMO-free, and so forth. But organic is also more expensive. And while I should be, telling everyone just buy organic, I'm a realist. I know that the average consumer can't necessarily afford all things organic. You should buy soap and yogurt organic, and then maybe the other things.
Just start with that, people.
But and don't get them confused. But although our yogurt does clean things, and their soap tastes good. But seriously, this really comes down to, we need the right to vote in the marketplace, to send a signal back to the market, to these companies, that no, we prefer to have not to have a chemical treadmill here, and that's what the campaign is about. So as I said, the connection, very simple, from building a business that was one spoonful at a time, one cup at a time, not from advertising but from integrity, from delivering. I've now sort of pivoted, and again, Stonyfield and many other wonderful organic companies are funding this, to saying to consumers, we can take this vote even further into actually the kind of policy that we have as a nation. And the last quick thing I'll say, which Rafi knows very well, is 64 nations around the world have that right to vote. Labeling is required for 2/3 of the world's population. So really progressive countries like Russia and China give their citizens the right to vote. We need to have it in the U.S.
And I'm going to jump in real quick, and then Rafi, I definitely want to hear from you. And what we're talking about specifically is, yeah, I mean, there's all these different issues that ebb and flow of how frightening it is. But the really simple thing in Colorado, with this Proposition 105, is really about labeling. So about us getting to make a choice. So yeah, I'd rather not have the GMOs, but at least can I choose and not have to become an absolute label detective in order to decide what I want to eat. So that's, so talk about these different elements, or these different things that you can choose to champion. So that's just, I want to just pop in there so you guys also give it a little backstory on, it really is just about.
And it needs to be said, there's a referendum in Oregon as well.
In Oregon as well, thank you, yes.
And there's legislative efforts in 24 states. And really what we're up against here is a kind of a corporate dictatorship. We have a, I mean, those are strong words, but I'm a proud capitalist, but these companies are controlling our rights to democratize the marketplace by fighting against labeling. And so you should be not only supporting the vote in both these states, but also look at the companies who are who are trying to stop the effort. Go to justlabelit.org. Go to Yes on 105 or 522, and see who the companies are, because we need to vote against them also. We need to let those companies know that that's not in our interest. We're not going to support them if they continue to suppress our right to choose.
And thanks to the audience for letting us get on the rant, because this really is, you know, I wanted to loop this in. It's important to me as well. The one thing I also found out from Robin O'Brien was I didn't realize that a lot of countries that have American-made products, it's really not even about a budget thing. I'm just going to throw this in there. American products are already labeled as having genetically modified products in other countries. They just don't do it in the States. So if you go to England, you'll see Hershey's or different products that say these use GMOs. And we're not doing that here. So that's really, I mean, to boil it down. But Rafi, jump in too, because I know you're obviously, as Gary reminded us too, your company is so instrumental in this as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on what you're saying, I had, you know, someone from France write in, say, you know, completely incredulous that, what? Wait, you mean you guys don't label them? You know, like, yeah, they've already kind of advanced to that point, and I think we'll get there eventually. Also, to, you know, continue with what Gary was saying, you know, what the opposition tries, you know, the sort of one of their hoodwink arguments is, well, you can already get non-GMO if you just buy organic. Well, yes, I love organic, and I love buying organic. I happen to live in South Central Los Angeles, one of these famous food deserts. My local market doesn't really have many organic offerings, unfortunately. I still have a right to choose non-GMO products, which coincidentally in that market is about 80% of the processed food, you know, because of the corn and the soy. You know, something like 90% of the corn and the soy that's grown in this country is GMO. So if I want to choose, you know, me living in this part of the country, if I'm trying to choose a non-GMO way, I can't even do that because the labels aren't there, and because I don't have, you know, necessarily the same choices that everyone else does. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
And I appreciate that too. I think that's a really great point as well. Hopefully you can hear me. That's a really great point as well, that it really is about choice more than anything. Again, we can open up a whole can of worms on all the different elements of it. I want to throw in a couple more comments as well. And guys, I will also have Rafi and Gary comment, because I know there's some questions in here too. Here's a quick one. And Lee, I understand it. Lee's saying fair trade is all positive, but why do I always feel like the stores rip us off by marking up fair trade items? I know that's a concern as well. Do you want to jump into that one real quick?
Sure. So I think you know, the issue with all of these things, with organic and fair trade, is you know, Gary talked about externalizing. You know, that's what a lot of unconscious capitalism is doing. They're externalizing costs. In other words, they're creating an environmental impact or impact on their worker health that at one point or another, you know, someone's got to pick up the tab, usually the taxpayer, you know. Right. So you know, either you build it into the product itself and say, like, okay, I'm going to create a product that's healthy for the environment, healthy for the workers that are making it, and yes, that's going to cost a little more, or the cost, you know, is going to end up, you know, showing up somewhere else. So I think that's really the choice we're making, and understanding that when you're purchasing a product, you have to take into account all of the costs in creating that product, and whether the costs are, you know, the environmental costs are included in the product or not.
And if I could just,
let
me just add, because fair trade, Rafi's right to equate fair trade and organics. I mean, first of all, we have to understand, and I think we're starting to, that cheap food is not really cheap. It's we're paying for it. We may not pay for it at the cash register, but we're paying for it somewhere. And that may sound elitist, and frankly, it is a little bit at this point, because it's only those who can afford to can buy, you know, food that internalizes these externalities that Rafi's talking about. In our case, our number one objective is to increase the well-being of family farmers, to keep people farming, because with people farming, you have better ecosystem management, better soil management, more conscientious practices, less toxins, et cetera, et cetera. And that is more expensive. At the same time, you know, organic or fair trade never set out to be food for the elite. So the key here is that those of us who have the time during our day, whether we're cooking or walking or whatever we're doing, to listen to a program like this, we're the ones who have some amount of discretion, and we're the ones who really have to drive that shift. We're the ones, because the number one way to bring the price down while not screwing farmers, while not getting into the old bad habits of ignoring externalities, is with volume. I can be a lot more efficient if I can pick up milk from 8 farms in a little cluster. You know, I have less transportation costs per farm. That's really a matter of volume. Where labeling comes in is labeling is democratizing the marketplace. And I have to quickly correct myself because I said 522. That was Washington State's referendum, but in it's Prop 92 in Oregon. So you know, your viewers, if they're wondering what they can do, OregonRightToKnow.org is the proposition that is on the ballot right now, and RightToKnowColorado.org is Prop 105. And by the way, the voting's happening right now because, as you know, you have mail-in voting. These are acts of seizing our power, right? These are acts of exercising our rights as individuals. Maybe you can't afford to buy everything organic. Maybe you can buy just a few things, and you should. Maybe you can't afford to buy everything fair trade, but you should buy what you can, and there are CSAs and other ways to you know, to access these products. But at the very least, we should be right now voting that we have transparency with what you described with the Hershey bars. We're not asking for a skull and crossbones on the front of the package. This is just a couple of words in genetically engineered cocoa or genetically engineered corn. As Rafi said, 90% of processed food out there is GM, and the only way we're going to get that back, get it back down to 80, 70, 60, 50, and 20, is by having the right to know what's in it and then exercising that vote.
Listen, if they're not going to put skull and crossbones on cigarettes, I'm guessing they won't on GMOs, right? We've been trying for that. But it's really neat to see, you guys, is the conversation that's going on in the audience right now. And we have my friend Nazim is in town. He's in here from Italy, and he actually asked, so this is a great question, is, oh gosh, where did it go? There's so many comments. It's so good. He wanted to know, is it helpful to email to write our state representatives regarding the labeling issue? I vote in the state of Florida. So look how cool this is. This is somebody in Italy who's talking about writing to somebody in Florida for something in Oregon and Colorado. So tell me about that.
So I'm glad, thank you, Nazim, because this is really, really crucial. So right now, politically, just as I mentioned, 24 different states have something going on. We have the 2 referenda in Oregon and Colorado, but we've got legislative efforts in all these other states. At the federal level, we have 2 things happening that's absolutely crucial, and you must write to your state rep, your congressperson, your senator. In fact, these Senate races we're watching them and working very closely on them because there's 2 bills. One, there's a right to know bill going through that DeFazio and Boxer have in the Senate. That's literally giving us the label. But even more perniciously, there's a Pompeo bill, which has now been scheduled for debate in December, which would deny states the rights to trump federal policy. You guys talked earlier about legalization of marijuana and hemp. Oftentimes in our history, including the women's right to vote, efforts have had to start at the state level when Washington's dysfunctional, which it certainly is now. This effort, this bill, we call it the Dark Act for denying Americans the right to know, and Pompeo is Pompeo. So you've got a right to your congressperson to stop it, and your senator not to join it. But it would number one, stop states from doing this. Number 2, it would codify a national, as a matter of national policy, that you can put labeling on as a voluntarily only. So I don't see any companies doing that. And the most dangerous thing it would do is it would redefine the word natural to include genetically engineered. And if you go to Monsanto's own website, you'll see the definition of GMO of genetic engineering is combining genes from one species into another in a way that doesn't happen in nature. Yet somehow in Washington it can be, natural. So, this is a very dangerous bill. If the Senate flips this time, if it goes Republican, there will be a Senate hearing in December on this bill, and it could be a veto-proof majority. And we could kill our rights to have mandatory labeling, to join France and Japan and China and the rest of the world. So, writing to your congressperson saying, look, I want the right to know, this is an issue for me, mobilizing your social media networks. You can get all this information at justlabelIt.org, the organization I chair in D.C.
So here's what I'm loving too. I'm going to pull up this comment. This is from Kim. Thank you so much for this, girlfriend. She says, hey, Nazim, fellow Floridian, I think it's a good idea to contact reps. Guys, check this out. Here's a good place for anyone in the States to find the rep, and don't forget to vote. That is powerful. So obviously we're on this specific topic, which is very important to all three of us here and clearly to the audience. But to go back to the original reason for this show was businesses making a difference and then having your voice heard. So whatever it is that lights you up and fires you up, like we've been getting fired up about it, go find out who your representative is. That was the biggest thing I wanted to do for people as business people and for yourself personally and for your family. Figure out, one, what your issues are, what's on the ballots. Go do your homework, find out who your representative is, take power, right, guys?
Mia, I want to jump in for 1 minute, just something else that people can do. Gary's mentioned the initiatives in Oregon and Colorado. There is, I think, a little over a week left, you know, and so if people are really fired up about GMO labeling and even if they don't live in Oregon or Colorado, they can help these initiatives by phone banking and talking to voters.
Yes.
They just have, you know, Gary mentioned the websites. If they go on the websites, there's places to volunteer, and phone banking is huge, and anybody can do that. You know, they'll show you how. They'll give you the script, and you can do it from like right where we are right now, from the comfort of our own laptops.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It goes without saying that these are also, of course, these campaigns are being outspent 10 or 15 to 1. So, needless to say, any donation, no matter how small, can help with direct mail and signage and phone banking.
So we'll post all of those links too, and actually a lot of the audience has been posting them already because they're awesome, so you can go and look at that. And then we have a couple questions. There's one I don't think we're going to be able to get to, but I know that I want to have Gary and Rafi jump on that one. So I'm going to pull it up, and then we're going to answer it in the questions, you guys, because we're getting at 51 past the hour. But Cynthia did want to know a certain amount. Do you dedicate a certain amount of profits to philanthropy, and what kind of percentage works in a business model? If you guys don't mind, I'm going to have you direct that to Cynthia in the comments, because I would love to have that actually written. Would be fantastic. Want to give a shout out to Kristen Drysdale's in the audience. She is a huge fan of Dr. Bronner's, and also the Stonyfield yogurt. So we got that going for us. And then let's end on this one, because Susan Finch proudly voted yes in Oregon. Way to go, Oregon. Yeah, let me see if I can get a little clapping.
We need some applause for that.
Yeah, we do need some. Actually, you know what we need for that is. All right, so listen, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to do my transition. Everybody knows there's a what's on section. I never know what I'm going to ask. Sometimes I ask what's on the bottom. You know, you guys are probably wearing jeans, so I want to know what's in your coffee mug. Hey, tell me what's in your coffee mug, or what's on your desk that you're drinking. Rafi?
I go to my local farmers market, and there's a guy who gives me the good fair trade organic stuff it's my morning ritual, and also I have growing up in Los Angeles, I grew up with lots of folks from El Salvador and have been there numerous times, so I always support Salvadoran coffee. That's my thing.
That's almost like a what's on and a bat crap crazy, but you're still going to get a bat crap crazy. I love that. This is what's perfect about it, though. Mine is definitely in my little Tesla mug. I got my coffee going. Gary, what do you got going on over there?
I'm drinking, and I was in prep for this amazing new product called Namacha. This is from Harmless Harvest. They make the best coconut water on earth. To be truth in fairness here, my son works for the company. They're out in San Francisco, but this is a cold brewed raw tea leaves. And I don't know if you can see the name, but it is, and they have a peppermint, funny enough. It tastes a lot like my favorite soap. But honestly, it's absolutely delicious. It's fresh. It's not pasteurized with heat. It's pasteurized with pressure, so it keeps the freshness of the tea leaves. And of course, it's all organic.
And you guys, you know, I had to go with what I was like, what am I going to ask them? And boom, like it is not just like, oh, I'm drinking water and that's it. They're doing cool stuff even when they drink stuff at their desk. So yay for my guests. So listen, we're going to wrap it up with the Bat Crap Crazy and the call to action from each of my guests. And Bat Pack, please just keep throwing your comments in there too. But I'm going to start with Rafi. What are you Bat Crap Crazy about, and what's your call to action?
So well, since we just talked about farmers markets, I love that, as I said, I live in a food desert, but there's hope, I feel, in my community because of the whole farmers market movement, and we actually are starting to have access to organic food, and it's local, and I find that it's really not very expensive. So I've just been getting super into it, and there's even now little corner stalls that are setting up. So I love that whole movement. And my call to action, I'll mention it again, is Dr. Bronner's is most heavily involved in the Oregon campaign, but we are also supporting the Colorado campaign. So find their social media pages, find them on Facebook, Oregon Right to Know, Right to Know Colorado, and get involved. Even just in the conversation there would be a huge thing.
A to the men. And we're going to put those links in there too. I so appreciate that, and I love your Bat Crap Crazy. All right, Mr. Gary, what are you Bat Crap Crazy about? What's your call to action?
I'm Bat Crap Crazy about the fact that the President's Cancer Panel now says that 41% of Americans alive today are going to be diagnosed with cancers, and they implicate the everyday exposure to chemicals as the cause. That's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 2 men. That's absurd, and that's a trend line. It was 20% 20 years ago. Now it's 41%. What's that mean for our kids? So we've got to get chemicals out of our food system. We've got to return to order and sanity. That means buying organic wherever you can, at the farmer's market, at the CSA, at the Whole Foods, at the the local natural grocer, at the supermarket, at the Walmart, at the restaurant. 2 calls to action: onlyorganic.org. Go there. You'll see a really fun video that shows you the difference between organic and natural, what organic really is, gives you some fun information and incentives, and then of course justlabellit.org, where you can really learn how you can be active in your states, in your other countries, but particularly to help not only support these 2 really crucial state efforts, but to help make labeling a reality across the country, and to help to stop this really dangerous dark act that I talked about earlier.
Tons of information. You guys know you always get your learn on, and today was no exception with my 2 guests. I want to thank them. We have Rafi Leuterman with Dr. Bronner Soaps. Thank you for all the great information. I so appreciate it. Yay! Gary Hirshberg with Stonyfield. And listen, I'm going to stay in the theme with my Bat Crap Crazy, because mine today, and I'm so bummed. I'm going to post a picture of them so you can see them. But mine today is Molly Soaps. I met her at ShiftCon. Monica Leonard came up with an amazing product. And I kind of got turned on my ear with some information about laundry soaps. But she sent me some laundry balls, and I'm going to show them to you when I'm in a picture, because they're these amazing wool balls that I use in my laundry, and they replace my my dryer sheets. So I'm crazy. I'm Bat Crap Crazy about dryer balls. How about that? And Monica Leonard. So listen, thank you, everyone. Gary and Rafi will also be commenting on here. We're going to post all the links, so don't go away. Stay in the comments. But I really appreciate everyone tuning in today. We had a banner audience and banner guests, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Mia.
Thank you. Bye.